Heyo everybody, Haku here with my top 10 most underrated Tower of God characters. Now this one's going to have a little bit of an intro on the front end of it before I talk about these 10, just to give some shout outs and thank yous and stuff right before I start recording, and to give a little bit of context. So this video was a challenge from Dr. Bonehead, who also made his own top 10, so huge thank you to him for essentially just taking this whole entire idea and throwing it into my lap and saying, here you go. But a huge thank you to him for just the shout out and like all the continued just general support of, I don't know, every once in a while commenting on my videos, talking to me, stuff like that. So huge thank you to him. And before I pass that on, I also want to say that this video should have been out like a week sooner. I recorded the entire thing, but the audio was having some weird issues. It was warbling every once in a while. I did a Tower of God update video that had that issue, and it really wasn't that bad, but I was like, no, I want this to sound right. So hopefully it does sound right. Hopefully I have everything fixed. I should have everything fixed. So that's why this is a bit late. But passing this on, I want to give a bit of a challenge back to Dr. Bonehead, a bit of a more spicy or, I don't know, a more controversial one, and that is the top 10 most overrated Tower of God characters. That's going to be a tough one, because some of the ones that I consider to be overrated are also ones that I really like personally. I overrate them. So that'll be interesting to see, and I already have notes for that video too, so I'm going to be doing that one right after this one, not long afterward. So you'll see that on my channel, and I'll re-challenge Dr. Bonehead to that. But as for passing on the underrated characters video challenge, if he wants to do it, if he hasn't already done a video like this, because I'm not sure, I watch both Dr. Bonehead and Nya D Hemmingz as they make videos, so I'm going to challenge Nya D Hemmingz to this if he wants to do it, if he hasn't already done something like that and I missed it. But also, I just wanted to give some shout outs too, because some of my first thoughts, some of the people I was going to pass this challenge on to were AOA, Apostles of Anime, or Milios, or oh gosh, Inspirational. Those three were they're people who've reached out to me, who've talked to me, and I wanted to shout them out, and I was going to pass this challenge on to them, but then I thought they're still doing read-throughs of the series, which is really cool. Go watch them catching up to the series and everything. But that's why I don't think this challenge would necessarily really work for them, given that they're still not caught up to the series, so it's kind of a bit more difficult to form an opinion on what the fandom really underrates or anything when you're still getting through the series, as compared to like Dr. Bonehead or me or Nya D Hemmingz, who've been reading for years and years and have a better idea of what we've been in the fandom longer to tell what they really underrate or overrate. But once they do catch up, I'd love to see all of their opinions on it too. But I just wanted to shout them out as part of this too. So before I get into the actual top 10, there were also some characters that didn't quite make the top 10. Like, they're obvious underrated characters, like Novik and Dan, who Dr. Bonehead already talked about. Again, see his video, it's amazing. Kind of sets the bar pretty high. So because of that, I left Dan and Novik off this list, even though they're pretty underrated. But I feel like he already said everything there was to say, and I could be a bit more creative, and since he already talked about them, try to find some different characters for my top 10. Also, there is one character who I feel like CU underrates heavily, but I don't think the fandom does, and that's a Knock. A Knock is a character that the fandom seems to absolutely love, but CU really, really doesn't seem to like a Knock very much. Like, she's done absolutely nothing after Workshop Battle, even though, I mean, it would make a lot of sense for her to do more stuff, and she was basically the second most important character in Season 1 behind Bomb. So, yeah, either way, those were just some, honorable mentions, and there were also a ton that were tough to sift through that were, characters that are minor, gosh, what's her name? Verdish, where I'm like, I really like this character. She's not really underrated, I just really like her, so I have to refrain from putting her on this list. But either way, with this long intro out of the way, let's get to actually talking about my top 10. Starting out my top 10 with Jinsung here, who is one of my absolute favorite characters. I talked about him a lot in my favorite characters video if you haven't already seen that. But the reason he's up here, I don't think he's super underrated. I think the fandom likes him generally a bit, but I think people should like him more. Like, he taught Bomb a lot about Shinsu control over the time skip. He was sort of the other teacher that doesn't really get as much credit as Jinsung does. Also, he's just an absolute genius, and he knows so much and has so much mystery. Like, how does he know what he knows? How did he know as a regular to like save his data on the hidden floor? And he was the only one of the only people with data still there, and he was waiting for Bomb. How did he know to do that? What is his, like, the full breadth of the backstory of him and Evankel, which seems really interesting. Like, he has so much going on that we just don't know about yet that I think is really cool. Also, add into the fact that he is high ranker level, he's like taking on Chonhee and all that. And he's big braining it like crazy. Everybody talks about Kunaguru Agnes big braining it, but this guy back in season 1 on the floor of test was basically playing everyone, including guides and high rankers. So again, he's a character that I think the fandom does like. They do appreciate him, but I think he should get even more recognition and appreciation for just how cool Jinsung is. My ninth most underrated character is Chang Blurode, a bit of an obvious one, just like sort of the Dan Novick obvious ones. It's weird that people underrate Chang. I feel like they don't as much as they used to, but he had such a cool role in the story. He had all these characters hyping him up, like Yuri, Jinsung, all of these really big, important, powerful characters hyping him up. He had this really cool backstory going on, actually. And then Siyu threw it all away, and I'm just still hoping he's alive somehow. Some kind of white heavenly mirror shenanigans. I have no idea. But I really want him to somehow survive, because his death kind of made no sense whatsoever. And even Siyu's explanation of his death in the context of things we've already seen doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So I'm still holding out for more Chang. If not, then he is not only a bit underrated by the fandom, but heavily underrated by Siyu himself. So yeah, pour one out for Chang. Number 8 is one that people are probably going to be kind of mad about, but I think it is Rachel. I mean, I think a lot of the Rachel hate stuff is sort of tongue-in-cheek at this point. Like, people love to hate her, but at the same time, like, pretty much everybody recognizes that she's a really well-written antagonist, though Siyu says she's the female protagonist, so again, she has this big backstory that we don't know about yet, that I'm really excited to one day learn about. But I do really think Rachel is a good character. Not one of my favorites, but she is one of the most deep and nuanced characters in the entire series, and I don't really know if she gets enough credit for that. How key she is to just everything that goes on with Bomb. How important she might end up being in the grand scheme of the entirety of Tower of God. I think that is all really cool. There's actually, I'm going to put links in the description and in the comments to all of those channels I mentioned earlier, but I'm also going to put a link to this one Rachel AMV that I saw before the anime started. I guess it's kind of like an MMV because it's made with the webtoon, but I love it. It added to my love of the character. I also think she's just this perfect, like, amount of normal. She's like just normal enough. I think her design is great, especially Rachel in the sweats. Jokes aside, looking at her design in, say, around Floor of Death, it looked incredible. But that's one thing. Go back to Floor of Death. Everybody looked incredible. The character designs in Floor of Death were so good. I think that was like maybe Bomb at his height of how his character looked, either that or Hidden Floor. It was Rachel at the height of what her character looked like. Just Floor of Death, the art was so good right then. And it carried on in the Hidden Floor, it totally did. There was also one more thing I wanted to say about Rachel. The fact that I like that her character is this sort of she's not really evil. She's just weak. She just sort of, and a ton of people have said this better than I ever could, but she just sort of does these bad things and tries to justify it to herself that it's okay, that it's right, that she had to do it, even though she didn't have to do it. And I think it makes her such a nuanced character, and I don't think she quite gets enough respect for that as a character. But yeah, so that's it for talking about Rachel. No more Rachel for this video. Number 7 is Jaja. I think Jaja's super underrated just because she's a really, really funny and enjoyable character, but also people kind of sort of relegate her to just this sort of weak side character that doesn't really do much of anything, but she played a really, really cool role character-wise in Workshop Battle. We have to remember she passed the preliminaries. She held her own in Workshop Battle, and not only that, she had big assists in the Devil of the Right Arm arc, back at the Hand of Arlen, and also in Name Hunt Station, especially during that Ron versus Nya D fight, which was incredible. She had a big, big role there along with Dan, leading to Ran's victory. So again, Jaja is a character that is really cool and funny. She's actually very useful. She did a lot of useful stuff too in Revolution Road, and it seems that all the cool stuff that she's done really gets forgotten a lot. Yomi-seng is my 6th most underrated character, and honestly, you all should have seen this one coming from me. Like, I always talk about how great Mi-seng's character is, and how I never really noticed how great it was my first, 7 or so times reading, until it just finally clicked for me. Like, whenever something goes bad, she just keeps improving, and when everybody else is like, oh, we've trained enough or whatever, she keeps pushing herself forward and pushing the group forward to grow and adapt. And her role in Last Station was really, really good. The way she trained with Andrasi and then was one of the only other people, along with Andrasi, to fight alongside Bomb. It was so, so good, and really brought her character arc throughout Season 2 to this climax of now she can stand with Bomb and Andrasi and help them fight. And Bomb doesn't have to worry about her or protect her, and that was so, so good. And ordinarily, I wouldn't necessarily even need to put her on this list, but whenever I talk about how great Mi-seng is, I always get people, she's just a side character, she doesn't matter that much, who cares, she's not that great. I always have to fend with the anti-Mi-seng league. So because of that, that's why I'm putting her at 6, because there are people who totally underrate how good Mi-seng is. So now let's move into my top 5 and get a little bit more experimental with some of these picks, I think. And speaking of experimental, I'm going to have to put a picture up here of just something, like FUG or something, because we don't even know what this character looks like. It's Grace Mercier Leslec, or Grace Mercia Leslec. I always pronounce his name wrong. I've just been in such a habit of saying Mercier rather than Mercia. But I think he is underrated, just because people always talk about Enryu and Zahard and Uruk Mazano and all them, and they're great. They're totally great. But no one ever talks about how cool Grace Mercier Leslec is going to be. A potential irregular, somebody who is seemingly, because when Bomb got the name Jovial Grace, it was said that Grace was Grace Mercier Leslec's family name, so someone who is probably related to Arlen by blood, the same way that Yeon Yarde is related to Yeon Hana. So again, possibly an irregular, maybe. I mean, if they're the head of FUG, you gotta think probably, or at least some sort of special. There's something special going on there at least, but also a servant of V's. Again, the heretic, which is like the coolest epithet or sobriquet. This Lord of Evil, the one who, if he shows up, the 10 family heads are going to get involved. Also, there's throughout the story, there was this segment of FUG constantly trying to stop Bomb, mostly Karaka. But this entire time, Grace Mercier Leslec was supportive of Bomb. He's been behind the scenes for him this entire time. So I think I've said it before. When Big Papa Luzlek, Uncle Luzleku, shows up, I am going to be more hyped. I'm going to freak out more than I ever have reading Tower of God when Luzlek shows up. Especially if he has a good design, if he looks cool, if he looks like Uncle Jovial Grace, Uncle 25th Bomb, I am going to lose it when Luzlek shows up. Just the hype around him to me is so immense because I've been Team FUG even before it was cool, even before it was the normal thing. So I'm just so excited to see Luzlek whenever he finally shows up, and I don't think other people are as hyped about the character as I am. So that's why I'm saying I think my hype is very well founded in the universe. So I think he's underrated. I very much like this more than any of the previous five I've talked about. Luzlek is extremely underrated. Like, if it wasn't such a weird choice, I might even put him at number one. Honestly, number four is probably also a pretty obvious one, like me saying for those of you that watch my videos. Kelvin is extremely, extremely, extremely underrated. This man threw dukes with Zahard, given he lost, but how many other people have fought Zahard and lived? There's also the fact that he plays this insanely cool role in the story of being this person who Zahard defeated and let live to lead his enemies because he knew that Kelvin would be like, FUG, guys, we cannot attack this guy, he is too strong. So Zahard basically used Kelvin as his own deterrent from FUG trying to attack anymore, which is so, so cool. He also has the power to see fate, which is something that we have seen extremely rarely. Again, not as well as Zahard, obviously, but it's still a very, very cool ability. His bow abilities and ancient powers are really cool. We've seen that he can create these city-sized attacks. He can take on Yama and Evankel 2v1, which is so incredibly cool. Like, we have seen extremely few characters with feats like Kelvin. And another really, really great part of his role in the story, I like the stuff between him and Yama, of course, but another great part of his role in the story is Bomb copies his abilities in order to save everyone at the nest, which I think, again, is really, really cool, showing that not only did he have a role in these previous arcs, like the cage and the walls, but his presence there was enough to give Bomb like the idea for the ability. Let me just use a teleporting bow and arrow. So I love that. I love that that's also a part of his role. So yeah. What a great character that people just do not give respect to. Everyone talks about Evankel and Yama and Yusracha, but nobody ever talks about Kelvin in the same way. So yeah, Kelvin deserves so much more love from the fandom. But yeah, time to get into number three, which I think is another one that could go into number one, and another one that is a bit of an experimental choice, and that choice is Bomb's forgotten teammates. So I'm putting forgotten here in quotation marks, but Bomb's teammates that got left behind, that we haven't heard of again, and that I've honestly been waiting to see, some of them at least, for forever. The Season 1 ones in particular. Season 1, Chunhwa, Sunwoo-nare, Rouge, and Levin were all characters who got rings as part of the whole graduation thing. They played roles kind of as important as some of the characters we did see again in Season 2 and onward. And even though they played roles as important as them, they haven't shown up in Season 2 onward, and I'm just waiting to finally see them again. Sunwoo-nare was one of the first regular, I guess really the first regular anima we ever saw. Chunhwa was one of the holders of the 7 Holy Swords. We have Rouge, who was also there. But of course, Levin played a really cool comedic role throughout the first season as well. And it's just a shame we're not going to be seeing him in the anime again, obviously. It's just a shame that we didn't get to see more of them. And I've been waiting for them to show up again. Because you think, at least Chunwa, they're important enough to show up again, right? They're a part of Bomb's group. I mean, everybody always makes the joke about Bomb forgetting about Prince and Ackraptor, but how do you forget about these four? We've had Amigo Chaz showing up again. We've had Paracule showing up again. But we haven't had any of these four, so that's something that's like always bothered me for years and years and years. Something that has annoyed me is that we haven't seen these four again. I also put Felix, Hanul, and Hana in this category just because Hanul, he's so underrated. I legit forgot he existed. I was one day just going along about my business, making my weekly Tower of God live reactions and reviews, just enjoying my life, and somebody brought up the name Hanul Kang, and I was like, who? Who is that? I forgot he existed. I went back and reread the series, and I was like, oh my god, he was part of Bomb's team for like a good 4 arcs or so, all the way from Revolution Road through Dollar Show. Yeah, through Dollar Show. He was part of Bomb's team, and he was kind of on screen a good bit. So it's like, how was he there that long? And I legitimately forgot he even existed. Also, Hanayu, I really liked her design. I really wanted to see more of her. She didn't deserve to go out the way that she went out with the burned hands. So I really hope to see her again. They could even do stuff with her being related to Yu Han-sung, because technically her name should be Yu Hana, and the Yu in her name is the same character as the one in Yu Han-sung's name, so they could even make them related. I don't care. I'd just like to see her again. Throw Felix in there too, because Felix never really stood a chance. But yeah, they're all characters that, I don't know, I feel like they got shafted and should have had more love, both from the fandom and from the webtoon itself. Massively, massively underrated. And if you wanted to, you could maybe even count Daniel and Akka as part of this group. I even considered giving Daniel his own spot, but I'm like, is he really underrated, or did he just play a really good role, but then his role was over? So, yeah, you could even put Daniel and Akka in this group if you wanted to, but number 3 possibly should have been number 1. It's Bomb's forgotten teammates. The second most underrated character, the runner-up here, is Muntari, and I'm not sure it's something you'd want to be a runner-up for, even. Muntari's super underrated. Muntari was somebody that we saw use reverse flow control, one of the only other regulars we saw do that, besides Bomb himself. So that was really cool. He was strong enough to freeze Ron. Like, he was pretty strong, pretty hype for his time, but really underrated just because Bomb's group is so OP, and also because of the way he went out. But I also think he played a cool role in the story. I liked his character a lot. And he's one that I think people forget about too often. I've often seen people mention Muntari or mention Muntari myself, and got a collective who. So, yeah, he's underrated. A lot of people just know him as that one blue guy. So yeah, I liked Muntari. I think he had a cool role, a cool character, and he was really strong, and people don't give his character enough credit at all. Number 1 to me is the Mad Dog, Buelsar Elliot. So, Elliot is a character that's mega underrated, because I still remember I was in one of Nya D Hemmingz' streams, and I brought up Elliot and got a collective, who? So people forget about Elliot, but I think also CU underrated Elliot by having him get off-screened, which is one thing that I always talk about. I always talk about Elliot getting off-screened in Tower of God. So this character was cool, mysterious, whatever, throughout Revolution Road. And then at the peak of Revolution Road, we see Bomb go into Thorn Rage mode, and he's holding his own, like, pretty easily with Thorn Rage mode Bomb, which is insane at the time because Bomb just crushed the hell out of Daniel. So he's doing all of that. It's all really cool and all that. And then we continue on. He's still a strong member of Rachel's team. And in Dollar Show, we finally get him against Bomb. He takes out Muntari, who we've seen be really strong, again, pretty easily. And then the 95% of their fight gets off-screened, which is disappointing. Also, we can't forget that he could have been a potential Slayer nominee if he helped White out. I'm pretty certain that was part of the reason he was trying to revive White, was because he could get a Slayer candidate role. And Yama was trying to do that with all of his 3 Mad Dogs. So again, he was a really, really cool character that I feel like CU kind of tossed aside, the fandom kind of tossed aside, and his journey is still not over. He could still show up very easily in the battle that we're currently having. And I would like him to show up eventually. His character was good. Angel's character was really, really good. I don't think she's as underrated. I think people really like Angel, but I want the 2 of them to show up again. They were really good. But yeah, his role didn't end. Even in Season 3, his journey is a part of why the stuff with Paul and Chang is able to happen. So he's a very important character. Like, in hindsight, to a lot of the storylines, he puts some things into motion. Plus, he was just strong and cool, and I kind of feel like we all forgot about that. But I think, yeah, that is it for my top 10. So, since that's it for the top 10, let's talk a bit in the outro here. Thank you so much for watching. Another shout out to those channels. Again, their links will be in the description and in the comments, because I don't know which one's easier to look at for mobile. I usually just do all my stuff for YouTube on PC, which is why I put it in both, because I don't know if it's harder or easier, one or the other, if you're on mobile. But those channels, Inspirational, Apostles of Anime, Milios, they'll all be there. I'd love to see their opinions on this when they catch up to the series. But my challenge goes out to Nya D Hemmingz, and my sort of reverse challenge to do overrated characters, a video which I'll have coming soon, is going to go back to Dr. Bonehead. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it sounded alright, that the audio wasn't all messed up. I hope I fixed all that. But yeah, I suppose that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Like if you did like the video, comment down there to tell me what you thought of my list. Give me your list. I'd love to see what you think are the most underrated, or how terrible you think my list is. That would be funny. Subscribe for more Tower of God, much more on the channel. Like I said, there's a ton more coming, especially over this hiatus. I just have so many ideas. I just need to get the time to get to them. Follow on Twitter if you want. If you want a link to the Discord server, it's free and open for anyone. Just ask and I can give you a link to it. And if you'd like to help me continue to make videos by supporting on Patreon, it's patreon.com/Haku of the Tubes, or a link will be in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Look out for the overrated characters coming soon. Like I said, don't get too upset about that one, because some of my favorite characters are also going to be on that list. Andrasi is one of my favorite characters in the entire series. Andrasi's going to be on that list. That's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.